I have 7 p.m. and welcome to the Raymore City Council work session for Monday, October the 15th. We have 3 items, official items on our agenda tonight and actual need to go to executive session afterwards. So we'll go ahead and get started on the fiscal year 2019 proposed budget discussion. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, sir. As you all know, we've had first reading of the budget, which was the budget that was actually presented to you all, my proposed budget, in its original form, and stuff flying all over the place. And so that reading is completed. There is still the discussion that the council has if you would want to make any changes to that particular budget, either in one of the elements that I proposed to you, or if you would like to utilize any of the available fund balance. We have estimated available fund balance of approximately $1.2 million. I would recommend that if you're planning on spending any of that, that you leave a balance of between 250 and 300,000 in there after items have been added, just in case there is an emergency and we have to tap into that. We would hate to have to violate or make an exception to the council's rule of eating into the 20% restricted reserve balance. That concludes staff report on this item, sir.
Okay. Well, in front of you, you have the list of items that they had proposed to us. Is there any further discussion on any of the items that they have listed? I know we had talked about and had a demonstration, or at least a presentation by the chief on the mobile communications and command post vehicle, and that was a high-end estimate. Since then, she and her team have had an opportunity to go over to Olathe and visit with them and see their command vehicle and how it was set up. And I know that you'd had a discussion even with the Mid-America Regional Council about the potential of it being another public safety answering point in the event of an emergency, which is a unique idea. You know, in the county, we have 5 PSAPs, which are Raymore, Belton, Sheriff's Department, Pleasant Hill, and Harrisonville. And this could actually be, if with assistance from them and from the Emergency Services Board, naturally, the potential to set up a command post that would actually be able to replace one of those primary points of dispatch. And so I thought that was an interesting conversation that the chief and I had over that particular topic, and I'll let her expand upon that if you don't mind. Oh.
As the mayor indicated, I had the opportunity to meet with Eric Weinbrenner, who is the communications director for MARC, to talk about the things that the mayor had pointed out. It would be a very unique opportunity for the city of Raymore because there is no mobile 911 in our entire region. We would have the opportunity, if we were to build this vehicle from the ground up, to be a mobile 911 center. So as the mayor indicated, if one of the PSAPs, you know, either here in Cass County or anywhere else for that matter, if we were to deploy to provide mutual aid to another jurisdiction where their 911 was down, then this vehicle would have the capability of coming into that jurisdiction in order to take those 911 calls. They were really excited about the possibility of that kind of technology. And after meeting with Eric, I prepared a letter basically to describe, you know, what we were looking at doing. And so in addition to, as the mayor had said, we went to Olathe Police, Olathe Fire. We're getting ready to go to KCK to look at their command post vehicle as well. And as we indicated in the white paper that Ryan and I had written, that, you know, there were some other conversations that we wanted to have after our initial meeting with you all, and many of those have taken place. I met with Chief Stevens from South Metro, and he is now part of our team. our work team to look into the feasibility of building this vehicle, and South Metro being part of that. He's very excited as well, and so he'll be going with us to KCK next week to look at their command post vehicle. So we've done a lot of things, reached out to the folks that you know could possibly provide a funding stream in addition to city money to move forward with this. So.
Any questions of the chief? Yeah, Mr. Holman.
As Forrest Gump said, Chief, I think that's a fine idea. Does it change the cost estimate for what we had listed in the original package for what we thought we ought to budget for that vehicle?
It doesn't, only from the perspective of, you know, you can't count your chickens until they're hatched, and you know, until we have a commitment from the ESB or for Mark for cost sharing, you know, for the entire radio portion or the 911 portion of that, you know, it doesn't change that. I didn't mention that one of the things that we did after the presentation is we started, once we formed the work group, we started reaching out to you know, those companies around the country that actually build these type of vehicles. I think we mentioned that Lenexa, excuse me, Lenexa is in the final stages of building a vehicle, and so you know, many of those departments around the metropolitan area have sent us some of the plans. So we reached out to some of those companies, and we recognize that, you know, this isn't going to be, the Platte County Sheriff's Department has a 42-footer. You know, it's not going to be that, but, you know, if we can come in under budget, and then there could be some cost sharing with folks like South Metro or Mark or the ESB, you know, we feel like we would still want to make sure that we had the adequate funds in case any of those things didn't work out.
So you think, in short, if we authorize the requested budgeted amount of 500,000, we would still be okay to do what we originally planned, plus at least look into the concept of the mobile 911?
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Anyone else? Now, I know we've talked about several other items on this tonight. We talked about the license plate reader. Initially, we talked about 1. 2 was talked about in the event that we needed another vehicle out there. So, I mean, that's, you see the costs associated with that. And I'm really just trying to spur conversation on that and ideas, and I would open it up to anything else that anybody had at this time. Ms. Abdul, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question. I had a note on my paper from when the budget was presented on the CGIS software, a note of $50,000 to go ahead and pay that up for 10 years versus the 5 that's on here. So I was curious, without me having to do the math, is that the amount included in the $770,000, the total for the needs only, or is that just the $5,000?
No, the amounts that you see down below would reflect a $50,000 commitment.
Mr. Berenson, do you have something? So on this, of the 700 total of need only and the 770,000, those are just the ones that are highlighted that we had talked about, the all-terrain vehicle. Because I noticed that the license plate reader is not included under the highlighted amount. And then, let's see, what was the other? The drone tether system we talked about. Of course, the command vehicle we just spoke about. And then the last 2 items on there was the Centerview video and recording production equipment and Madison Street trail improvements for Rec Park. Mr. Holman, yes.
So Sonia mentioned a 770,000 on the highlighted needs only. Either I did the math wrong or there's something in here. I've got 725. That would be the police ATV, the secure software for CGIS at 5,000, the command vehicle at 500,000, Centerview video at 45,000, and then the Rec Park trail system at 150.
I think that's what you, that
That's what I
CGIS.
say. It's, okay, so that should be 50,000 instead of 5.
It's $5,000 a year, and our recommendation was, if you're going to put an amount aside, put 10 years worth aside.
Okay.
Yes.
I was curious about the one on here with no cost. Do we have any idea what we might think about for that?
After their initial proposal, they went completely dark on us and have returned no phone calls. We suspect that in contemplating it, the best I can say is perhaps they have two pastors at that church, that one of the pastors made that contact on his own, because when we approached personnel at the church, they had no idea what we were talking about. So it obviously wasn't any kind of a high-level discussion or a group discussion from the board for the church. So I would imagine that that offer is definitely off the table.
Mr. Barber.
Thank you. I had a question about the center view outdoor speakers. Since we've got the center view video and recording production equipment, if we package that all together, if we went and bid that out, all that together, do you think we'd have an advantage in doing that if we approved all that now instead of waiting and adding it piecemeal? And I only say that because Centerview is so popular right now. There's so much being done out there. If it's something that, even if it's nice, I think that's something that would improve just the experience of Centerview.
I definitely think that there would be economies of scale in bidding it out, because the same companies would be doing both of those.
So are you recommending that that be added in?
I think I would.
Yeah, I really like the idea of that too, and I think you're getting a lot of agreement from around the table on that.
Summertime, people renting that out outside, they probably want that.
And let me digress a little bit. Let's go back to the license plate reader thing that we had, that was not included in that. We talked about two. Is that still something that, I know Mr. Burke had brought that up. Is that something that you'd still be in favor of, sir?
I'm in favor of it as long as it doesn't push something else, off the plate. But it is a low-cost item, and I think we would get a lot out of having one available all the time.
Mr. Ullman, you have a?
Maybe just so we don't piecemeal the whole night away, I'd recommend that we at least start from a starting point of everything that's listed as a need. Let's include in the budget. See if start the discussion from there. That's going to eat up $770,000 of the unreserved fund balance, and then we can work from there on the items that we're talking about.
Could I suggest, because of the nods that we add up here, then I think what we're hearing is all of the needs be included, and the 13,000
Centerview outdoor speakers, I'm good with that. I think everybody is as well. Yeah.
Hang on just one second. Cindy, do you got that? Okay.
And that just puts us at
783. Yeah.
You want to do the license plate reader at all?
On the readers,
I thought we did.
they're attached to the vehicle.
Right, right.
So
They have to be
if
mounted
the
to
vehicle
it.
doesn't permission, we just don't have one.
Right, right. I think that's why Mr. Burke
Yeah,
was
that's why I-
advertising that we go with two.
Yeah.
Yeah, you still have the ability.
Thank you. I have a question about the scanners. Are there different providers that we can get these through? Are we better off just getting one system and trying it out this year and seeing how it works? I think it would be nice to have two, but I know we're kind of tight on the budget this year.
Yeah, to see what's going on, actually.
What do you think, Chief?
I'm not familiar with other vendors. I'm not saying that there are not. When I was exploring the license plate readers, obviously I looked at the ones they were using in Kansas City and a number of others. I know I went to the county, the sheriff's department just purchased one, and it was the same brand.
Okay.
They had it with the KCPD. So I'm not sure it's a sole source, but I can sure look at other vendors if they're out there.
Well, we already know that it's capable of tying into the Regis system.
Yes.
So it would be, it depends on the type of software or domain that we're using, whether or not that particular vendor can.
Okay. I have no issue with the source we're getting them from, Chief. My point was simply to maybe just get one instead of two and see how we like it. before we order another one next year possibly. And why have you? Can I ask a quick question? Somebody brought up the point, if that vehicle is driving and that scanner picks up let's say a felony warrant, how long does it take for that to come back to the patrolman? Is that a few seconds? Is that?
The notion is that it's almost immediate. It's reading, and as the mayor indicated, the thing that's so significant about the technology is the software that it interacts with. And so it has to be reading those license plates just almost simultaneously and giving them hits. And so as it's reading every license plate that it's seeing, that the license plate reader is seeing, they're getting a whole lot of reads on things that there are no warrants. And so it has to be simultaneous is the idea of how quickly it works.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Duggan, did you have something? I think you had your hand up.
I was just thinking, question piggybacking off that, but then I had another point. So then it gives the officer a description of the car, should it get a hit?
It will give all the information that the database has available. Let's say, for example, it's a felony warrant and the individual is associated with that license plate because they were stopped in that car. So it's only as good as the information that's put into the database. When that individual was, say, stopped on a car check and that's loaded into that database. So yes, it's entirely possible. You have a felony warrant and you're driving. Okay, well, that's good. That's a good thing. And you're driving somebody else's car. Obviously, it's only going to hit on the information that's associated with that license plate.
So I guess what I'm thinking is, so if the officers are driving or sitting by the side of the road and it hits on a license plate, how do they get a description of the car, or are they hunting then for that license plate?
What we're using that information is to increase our probable cause. And of course, that's always been some of the argument against systems like this, that there is no probable cause, that the officer is just hitting on every license plate that it sees. And so, our instruction, our direction and training for our officers will be that, you're going to be using that information from the database for your probable cause. Is it the right car? Is it the right description of the individual that's in the car? And all of those things that would lead them to, to stop that vehicle based on the information that the technology gave them.
So in answer to your question, they're mostly looking for the license plate again.
Okay.
On that, because it might not be on that particular vehicle.
And it will tell them what quadrant, because there's 4 on a car, it'll tell them what quadrant has detected it too, is that right? It'll, you'll know if it's in your front right view or back left.
So then, my point I was hoping to make, I think I agree with Mr. Berenson that maybe trying that out with one car seems most logical, and not that we probably are going to not be able to get a lot of things on this list, but it seemed like when we heard the presentation on the budget, the forensic extraction device really piqued my interest and seemed like something that would be worthwhile for our department to have, that it would save time in possibly finding criminals. So if we had to choose, I would pick one of those and one license plate reader versus 2 license plate readers. Not that we're down to pennies on the budget at this point, but.
So add 30,000, is everybody in consensus? Add 30,000 for the forensic extraction device and 25,000 for one license plate reader.
Looks like it.
Very good.
I did have a question.
Go ahead.
On the 19 budget, we're talking about the 19 budget, that you do have amendments you could add in 19 or no? So let's say you had one now, you get in halfway through the budget next year, and it looks like you would prefer to have another. We have the opportunity to amend to the budget midterm?
Certainly we have the funding, sir.
Okay, that's what I want.
Yeah, the budget is a living document through the
Yeah.
year. It can always be amended.
Okay.
And
We don't know
is.
this yet. Yeah.
What'd you have, Kevin? Go ahead.
500.
Well, she's tallying it up there.
I can't see.
No. She has 813.5 right now. So you're off 25.
That's good.
Oh, now we're at 838.
Yeah, she
Never
still had
mind.
one item left.
Go ahead.
And not to, I'm just going to ask one more question about the license plate readers, because just curious, our fleet of patrol cars have changed, and the ones I've seen are on trunks. I haven't seen them on SUVs, but do they put them on SUVs? Are we going to have to keep some cars for those? Or I'm just curious if that's something we need to, be prepared for, budget for in the future.
I know the sheriff's office put one on in the spring of this year on an SUV. I haven't personally, because you're right, all the ones that I was familiar with and worked with when I was in narcotics in Kansas City were all on sedans. Okay. But I know that they have the capability and would not miss the opportunity, I'm sure, to make those sales, and so they've likely adjusted.
Well, and actually, as technology has come along, as everything else, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller.
Just
and
hang
so
that out the window.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to hang on the cars, a lot easier. It used to be a big, large honking bar that they had mounted everything on, and now it's gotten smaller.
All right, I'm good, I'm sold. I'm done.
All right, so we're at 838.5 right now,
You're down to 397 in available fund balance.
and we want to keep about 250 in there as a
50?
potential reserve fund. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to move the fingerprint scanner into the budget at $1,700. And with the more information we have, I think the better.
Is that something, Chief, that the supervisor would have with them in the event there was a question?
Yeah, it would have to be, because they're $1,700 for every handheld, so, rather than put 6 on the street or 5 on the street at a time, we'd have a supervisor that would respond to the scene of a situation where the person's identity was in question.
Okay.
So, yeah, one for the on-duty supervisor is what we had proposed.
Okay.
Everybody okay with that?
Everybody good?
Cindy?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Jay. Okay.
So an item that's not on this list, I think I've told a few of you, got our challenge coin, our old one. I have submitted designs to the staff for a new coin with our new logo on it, and a historic coin to kind of complete our entire history here within the city. There's 3 distinct periods. Forwarded that to staff a couple months ago. They've been in contact with
Symbol Arts?
Symbol Arts, yeah, thank you, out of Salt Lake City. We can get the 2 new coins and some custom boxes that the city can use, council, the mayor, staff, if we have a VIP or somebody we want to recognize with a really nice gift, and we can do it pretty much on demand. So you got the boxes there, you pop the 3 coins in, and you've got a really nice case. If the mayor's going to go to an event or something, he can present one of these. Kevin went and met with the governor, it'd make a nice, hey, this is from the city of Raymore, that kind of thing. Initial purchase, because you're talking about 2 new coins in the box, is going to be, we probably ought to budget about $15,000 was what I was told for that. And then replacement cost would be considerably less as we kind of go through our supplies, and it would be quite some time off. So I'd like to submit that one.
And what was the cost on that?
$15,000, I think, is what we probably ought to budget for that to start.
Discussion? Mr. Berenson.
Yeah, Councilman Holman, do you know roughly how many coins we would get for that initial buy?
I want to say that it was 150 of the 2 coins and 150 of the boxes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion about that particular item? Everybody good with including that in the budget? Okay.
We'll save on the solid steel cups now, sir.
Yeah, there you go.
That's what we've been giving out.
I get you. Mr. Duggan.
I had an idea, and I don't know if anyone else is really interested. I brought this up a while ago in the spring. I know that staff spends lots and lots of time making all of our copies and delivering all of our copies. And I know this has come up before, but as our council's kind of changed over and maybe gotten a little more technologically advanced. Exploring the option of getting iPads and Apple Pencils for council for packets and all of that. With the iPads, we would be able to see our packets and all of the information on the iPad. You can use the Apple Pencil to actually write on it, to annotate, rather than going through all the paper and the printing and the delivery. So save some money potentially on those sorts of things. And of course, gas money, but I don't know if people are comfortable with that or not. It looked like when we explored it in the spring, the cost for iPads, Apple Pencils, the service, and software would be $13,050 for everybody to get one. I don't know if anyone, if you're interested, if everyone thinks they're ready for that or not.
Discussion?
You may be, I'm not. If you're going to do it, don't buy one for me. We already have the computer up there. The packet is good. I work well with that. It was, in my case at least, it would just be a waste of money. So if you're going to do it, you can deduct whatever mine would cost, because I wouldn't use it.
Mr. Berenson?
I think it could be useful, and especially, you know, if we do more traveling and go to conferences and go to events, it would be nice to have. However, I'm kind of old school, and I would still rather have the paper, or I would probably require both because I'm old school and that's just how I operate. But that's my 2 cents worth. I think it's I don't think it's a bad idea, but in my case, I don't know that it would save a lot of money because I would still want printed copies.
Yeah, I think it's probably something that certainly is coming, and I'm just going to make it from a personal standpoint with me. I have an email here, and I print it out, so that's where I come from, and for some people, I guess it'd be an advantage, but I like having the packet. I like having the piece of paper, and and the other thing too, we did give the council a raise. I know it doesn't kick in for everybody, and so I thought kind of that was for kind of doing that kind of stuff if you wanted to get one. I don't know, is the software different? I mean, if you got one personally, would it, I mean, when you talk about buying software and all that, is that just the normal software with it, or I don't know?
I don't know the details of that. It says in the email from Mr. Fearborn, MAAS 360 iPad software.
That is security software that goes on it because it would be on our network.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Burke.
I'll just weigh in on that. Personally, I have been utilizing the computer more and more because I have to blow it up really huge on my screen, like people outside of my classroom could read it behind me. I'm not kidding. So I could see that being really useful. There are times that I mean, if I have the paper, literally I'm doing this, like when Charlene was making fun of me a few years back. But I do have an eye appointment. But I do see that definitely has some uses.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that? Yeah, I bought a Microsoft Surface, and that's the one I use. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we can add it in, and if you want it removed, we can remove it. So I go ahead and add it in for the time being.
It's not personal, just I didn't know if people were interested. I thought it would be helpful. I'm used to using it. It would work for me. I know, like, for example, using Google Documents and being able to access email, if we had that device that had all that stuff already on there, then that might make it easier for some people who struggle with that. But if people aren't ready, it's
Okay. Yeah, I didn't hear a consensus on it, so we could probably leave it off and then talk about it later if we get to a point.
Real quickly, Mr. Mayor, I would support possibly buying maybe 5 or 6 and letting people check them out. If you want to check them out for a year or a week, or you travel and want to go somewhere to a conference and you need one, since everybody doesn't want one or may not use one, I don't see the harm in considering buying maybe a few of them. If it makes it easier for somebody or it makes them more efficient, I don't see an issue with buying a few.
Okay. Well, food for discussion later. Yeah, Mr. Barber.
Would that be this question to Mr. Fairborn, if we did something like that, would that be something that staff could benefit from it too, if there was, we got 6 of them and 3 of them are used, or question?
Many of the staff already have iPads, so probably not, and we have at least a couple of checkout laptops that actually get used a little bit more.
Okay. Well, moving right along. Mr. Barber.
Well, since we're, things to think about, I've got, this is something that has been brought to the council before. It's been obviously not approved before, but had several people ask me about transportation, and I had Jim do some checking on what it would cost to add an Oats bus for a couple of days a month to the city, just for our citizens in Raymore, and that would run $6,480 a year, and that's two days a month. Is that correct? That would be the maximum. The way this works is you actually pay by the hour. That's the maximum number of hours we could have it, and if it wasn't utilized, then we wouldn't be billed. Am I correct there?
That's correct, sir. The 6,480 was the amount that would be charged if on both days of the month the bus was out for 9 hours. And that's what they call key on to key off, which means that, and Sarah Davis with Oats had indicated that if you get 12 people on there, it becomes an 8-hour day of shopping, and then a half an hour to get back to the barn and a half an hour to get to where you're picking everybody up. And so that would necessitate a 9-hour day, but a lot of days it's not a full bus. Not everybody utilizes it all the time. Probably be down quite a bit from there, especially because there's already runs going on. This would probably mean Belton does 1 bus, Mr. Adams does 2 buses, and that represents 3 weeks out of the month. So this would mean if we did 2, 1 week there would actually be 2 runs, and then we could fill that last week of the month when there's no runs going. And so utilization on each of the runs would probably go down. So you are looking at a conservative maximum amount with that number.
Ms. Abdullah.
Just a thought. Thanks, Mr. Barrington. Thinking in my conversations with some of the people who use the Oats bus, I'm wondering if we need 2 in 1 week, but would it, I'm not against budgeting this and maybe budget high and we don't use it all, but my thinking is the week that there's no bus, we provide the bus, and if there's a 5th week, then we pay for that extra week, the bus that week. Because one of the big concerns is in those longer months, then sometimes they're going 3 weeks without shopping. So if we filled in that week that doesn't have a bus and then just did the 5th week, rather than overlapping. But if we find out that there's a need to have a week with 2 buses, I wouldn't be against that either, but maybe some flexibility in that plan. And on that note, while I've got the mic, I wonder if there's any interest in funding that up for a few years rather than just 1.
Mr. Holman?
I like what you got to say. I think it's a good point. I don't know if we're better off funding it out for a couple of years. What I'd like to do is ask staff, we fund this year, and then ask staff over the next year to determine a combination of either Meals on Wheels or some type of senior meals program to go with this. I mean, as a combination thing. That's the only counter argument I would have to funding it out in advance. I'm not opposed to that, but I'd really like to see what our possibility is to expand that, and there may be more need for some type. I know in the original proposal several years ago that there was some version of that. I think we just kind of got caught because of the timing of everything this year, we weren't able to really put together a full package on that. But I'd like to see us explore that and then maybe look at it for funding next year.
Mr. Barber?
Yeah, and I should have, when I brought this forward, I think that's what you talked about, doing that 5th month. I think that if we can do that, I think that's a great idea. And I really, going out more than 1 year, I'd like to make it just this year, and then, like Jay was saying, let's look at how it's utilized. Maybe we want to do more, maybe, I think it's going to be utilized. I don't think that's going to be an issue. But if we're just, I don't want to get just stuck in pigeonhole with what we got right here. Our population's growing, our community is aging. I personally have got personal experience dealing with, taking care of my mother, so I understand how important this is for people to have transportation. So I'd like to really take a really deep, and I haven't looked at it real careful, I just had a request, but after having this 12 months, I think we'd have some data we could look at and really improve on it. And maybe, like Councilman Holman said, maybe add some more things to it. So that's my thoughts.
Okay, yeah, Ms. Abdullah.
And just to add, and I guess in my opinion, I love the idea of adding on the meals with it. And I think that, like Jay said, that's been a goal for many years. We haven't figured it out yet, but I think we're continuing to work on that. I see the benefit in funding it out for 3 years, because if next year we want to add meals, then we've already got this $6,000 budgeted. It's already ready. We can add on the meals for whatever additional cost that would be and not have to be concerned with maybe the larger amount. So 3 years of it would be $19,440.
Is it doable? I mean, are we able to push that out?
Yeah, well, we put it in the restricted revenue fund.
Okay. All right. Is everybody good with that? The 19,000? Everybody good? All right. What was it, 19,200? Is that right?
19,440, according to my math.
19,440 for the 3 years. Okay. Mr. Holman, did you have something?
Yeah, I have a question, I guess, for staff on this. So there's a project on here that, if it were not for the overriding nature of the police command posts, I would have really pushed this hard. I know we don't have the money to do it now, but that Johnson Drive completed to Harmon Drive is an important piece for our transportation plan. It really is. If you drive down Dean, you can see the curb cut, you can look over and you can see the outer road. And that means people coming in and going out of town don't have to go through that roundabout, especially if you live between 58 and Lucy Webb. It also gives us an outlet if there's a collision and a bottleneck on 58, just this side of the bridge. What I'm wondering, Mr. Fuhrborn, is it possible for us to do like we did with Centerview and put a little seed money away for that project? Maybe say 20% of the cost, the current estimated cost?
Yes, we can.
Easy enough. At 20% of the projected cost would be $73,000. And if we want to do 15% or you want to do less, I'm good. But I'd like to earmark that. I think that is an important piece of our transportation planning going forward. It certainly benefits Ward 1 and Ward 2. Certainly, everybody driving through there, and anybody driving south on that will use that road. They really will. So I'd like to get us to earmark some funds like we did with Centerview for it and make sure that we fund that in the future as soon as possible.
Well, I actually got a call from a resident of Benton House that says it'd be a lot easier for me to get to Walmart.
I think it would be a very popular project. I think people would really support that.
Yeah. Look at Walmart come up. There you go. Yeah, there you go. What are your thoughts on that? It didn't seem like you're all that crazy about the idea.
No, I love the idea of Johnson going through, sir.
Oh,
And
yeah, I mean
all
that,
the staff would recommend that. I mean, that's why it's on the list.
As seed money.
The amount, the 20% amount will drive us below what I would recommend to the council. So perhaps a 15% amount?
I'm good with that. That's fine.
And what would be that 15% of that amount? You got to figure it up over
Now
there?
we got to figure out percentages.
Just do a set figure.
Yeah, that one's easy.
Oh, there you go. 54,750. She just did it.
We're all losing the trade.
Um,
54,750.
Like commemorative or
Award.
awards?
It's a challenge point.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. He doesn't want that.
My concern with the coins up there isn't the cost, it's, can we do a better job of describing what that money
Well, I like
goes
what
for?
what Sonia
Yeah.
just said about adding awards and recognition at the end of that. You bring more coins for awards and recognition?
Printing our own money.
On the Bitcoin. Day off.
Yeah. That's right about where you wanted to be.
Joe's got something.
Yeah, Joe?
Thank you. I just had a, turn it off now. Question for Mr. Fairborn. The area just to the south of where we'd be putting this Johnson Drive connection, is there any possible activity on development on that site at this moment?
Could it spur economic development?
Well, is there anything currently
We
going?
have not done one of these that it hasn't
could do a
spurred
cost
economic
share with
development
the
yet.
developer.
So I have every anticipation that this would follow suit.
But is there anything going on there that we know of at this point?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but but potentially, if a
Right.
developer comes in, it can be mentioned that the city has provided seed money for assisting on that project too. So that's a good
That's what
good
happened
idea.
down at Sunset.
Yeah, it absolutely is, yeah. So I know that Mr. Berenson had thoughts about how we could recognize staff over the next year and assist them. So I asked Mr. Fairborn to kind of put pencil to paper. One of the things that he ended up suggesting is that, particularly this year, with the holidays falling in the sequence that they are, is that the gang's getting a 4-day holiday with Christmas and Christmas Eve. Maybe potentially doing the same thing for New Year's Eve, because it falls on that Monday, so they'd get another 4-day weekend. He polled staff on this and some of the other folks, and they were pretty elated about the potential of having an additional holiday, and that might chew up a little bit of that. It's a one-time situation. It's going to chew up a little bit of that. What did you have any idea of cost associated with that?
It'd be a one-time cost this year because New Year's Eve is not a holiday for our folks. New Year's Eve happens to fall on a Monday this year, so it would be a one-time cost just this year. Very impactful to the employees. The cost would be associated with the folks who need holiday pay, who are going to be working that day, and it would be approximately $8,000.
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of
And we kind of thought it was high impact, hits every single employee in one way or another, and kind of meets the spirit of, I know what you all want to be able to send to them. And of course, the holiday would be the council granted holiday.
Everybody good with that? Okay, cool. Yeah, you don't have to come in that Monday. That's right. You don't have to come in that Monday.
Barbara's gonna give you an extra dose of, what is it, Christmas crack you make, the candy?
No, it's my wife does, we're on the record here.
Alls I know is somewhere in there's baklava in my future, so I hope.
So we're very near what we had hoped to kind of leave into that as a fund balance for potential emergencies and other items. Is there anything maybe on a small scale that folks have thought about beyond what we've discussed this evening to move forward with? I think we've kind of hit all the hot buttons pretty much. Do you have anything?
And
else?
if you need any questions answered, what we will do is we'll be presenting the same ordinance to you all that you saw with the proposals from tonight, just like last year, if you can remember it, the original proposed budget, and then the add-ons are in a column next to it to get down to the total of what the fund balance would be. And then the AIM will be modified to reflect all of the items that are on here. It'll just be another paragraph at the bottom of the AIM. But if you have anything that you would like pricing on before then that you would be presenting as late as next Monday night, you can still
As a
amend it,
potential
because
amendment.
then there's a public hearing that's continued where people could get up and speak to that, even though it would be added that night.
Sure, sure. Mr. Barber?
Thanks, Jay. The only thing I was thinking, this is very small, but since we kind of have changed our logo and everything, and this is more a question to you, but what about having a little bit of money that you could buy some inventory of like shirts and pullovers and things like that? So wouldn't have to order every time somebody needs something. They, just pay for it as they need it, or you'd have it, but have an inventory of logoed, branded Raymore stuff.
Mr. Icky, how much do you think you'd need? I always hate it when I get that expression from my staff.
You can't
catching him kinda
stare
cold,
at
though.
him
Come
when
on.
when you're asking that question.
Catching him kinda cold.
That's not fair.
A couple $1,000s?
It wouldn't be very much for an initial stock, as long as what we would want to define is the intention for internal employees, council members, or was the intention to have items publicly available? Because that could influence.
I think all of those, I would say. So if somebody came up here and said, I want to buy a Raymore shirt, you'd be able to, sell a Raymore shirt, and what size are you, and go back out and color and pull it. So would you need a couple, $3,000 to get an inventory?
That would be more than
Okay.
enough. yeah.
I kind of hate starting a gee dunk, though. I can get,
What's that?
yeah, I mean, just having a store, an in-house store, I don't know,
Also, would there be any concern on the part of the council, especially if it was clothing related, that somebody would be passing themselves off as an employee? Internally would be one thing, though. I mean, it's
Yeah,
kind of two different
internally,
issues.
I like the idea internally. I'm sure it'd be open to the general public.
But-
But you had mentioned it would be on a reimbursement basis, correct?
Sure, yeah, I mean, you pay, if you wanted something, you go buy it, there'd be a cost associated with it,
Right.
so. But I
So
mean,
the city's not
like
out
you
any
do,
money altogether, out initially.
Just fronting the
fronting.
money, yeah.
And we do have some items, as you all know, that we do giveaways with.
Yeah.
The canvas bags and the cups. And so as far as that type of merchandise is concerned, we could, a couple of $1,000s to beef up Mr. Ickey's budget for those sorts of purchases, where you guys are handing it out to the public as a goodwill item and for the branding, and then internally just have things available for people to pick up.
Yeah, we can try it, see how it goes. So, 2, 3, 4?
That's more than enough, yes.
2, okay. 2,000 for apparel and.
Branding items and apparel.
There you go.
On your question, can you pay an employee?
Yes, sir.
I have a budget question or idea, I guess, and it really doesn't relate to this year. It relates to the existing operating year that we're under. We set aside in 2 segments, $600,000 and another $300,000 that we diverted from the rail car for cost overruns on the GEO bond projects. And most of those, I think, are pretty close to being taken care of. We should have a fund balance here of somewhere around $240,000, $250,000. What would be the procedure for us if we agree? I would like to earmark that money that's left over from this current operating year, for programming and rental of equipment for Hawk Ridge for the amphitheater. Give Mr. Ickey or whatever group in whatever department is handling that a source of funds that we don't have to go out and look for, because that money's sitting there. I just don't know what the procedure would be for earmarking that for that particular purpose, sir.
Because Hawk Ridge Park is a bond project, that money could be there for that. It wouldn't require any sort of a formal action.
Okay.
The issue is I would like to get a little further.
Right, yeah, I'm not saying.
We still got all of TB Hanna
We've got
to go here.
to finish and pay the bills, I get that.
But yeah, if you would want to then leave that money in the fund that it is
Yeah.
in to handle those particular items of that particular bond project, could certainly be done.
Perfect.
Rather than returned back to the fund balance.
General fund, thank you.
Yep, Mr. Burke?
On that idea, I was at Worlds of Fun on Saturday night, standing in line for an hour and a half near the amphitheater there to get into a haunted house. And I thought, if we have productions at Hawk Ridge at any time that's past dusk, we're going to need to rent a spotlight, or we're going to need to have a place to have a spotlight. And I would think that probably renting it when the need occurs is probably going to be more cost effective. But it's something to think about, not necessarily in this budget, but something to think about down the road, that we will want something to that effect. Thank you, since you brought it up.
Yeah. Anything else? Good. Okay. We'll move on to the next item, which is council membership in the National League of Cities. Or did you want to complete this?
No,
Are you all done?
That's it.
Good?
That's
Okay,
it.
all right. So National League of Cities.
For a number of years, I have been wondering about the value of having the city of Raymore be a member of the NLC. They have a number of items to offer. The cost to the city of Raymore per year would be, with our population, until our population exceeds 30,000, would be $1,861 a year. The NLC functions quite similar to, at the council's level, to the ICMA. As far as being an ICMA, we would simply be an ICMA on NLC city. The thought being that we could take advantage of a significant number of grant opportunities that the NLC offers to perhaps get payback in a more immediate nature on the investment in joining. They, like everybody else, have a number of other items. I'm just going to have Mike, if you could just flash through it. There is a section on here that is going to talk, if you could go to the membership section, I think it's there. And then if you scroll down where it says member benefits, back up, Mike. Member benefits there. And if you could just start scrolling down, there's grant access, there's the prescription drug discount program for our citizens who aren't covered on certain prescription drugs. These are just a long series of items, significant number of council member and staff trainings that are available for professional development. Their annual national conference is actually considered better as far as the amount of information outtake from it than the ICMA conference itself. So it also gets me to that selfishly to that third conference that I know the council wants me to be hitting if at all possible. Lot of congressional caucuses call on the NLC to get their input as far as what is going on. Just a number of things I would encourage you. Unfortunately, their website doesn't lend itself to printing things out. It took me about 2 hours just to get to this point. But I would seek council input on whether or not you are okay with us joining this group, and if it is, that we still have in this year funding in memberships that could be utilized to get the city in here, but wanted to gauge your interest or
Yeah,
approval.
from a mayor's perspective, I'm actually an advocate for that, because I know a lot of my fellow mayors are strong advocates of the National League of Cities. They receive a lot of additional conference information and training on other things within the city government. So I know that Carson Ross, the mayor out in Blue Springs, is very active with this organization and has held office in the organization and talks highly of it every time I'm around him. So I'd be an advocate for it. Anybody else have any?
Well, I know we talked earlier, and I did some reading and went on the website. Yeah, I think it's appropriate that we would be, because the initial funding that we can get utilized from this, from the funding we would get and utilize what we can use in the future for different projects that are coming up. We've talked about $1,800 a year is nothing compared to what we can get back from them per year. They have a lot of grants and purposes there where you can get financial aid, and there's a lot of open things that we can use. From when we were talking, and I read up on them on their website, I think it'd be phenomenal. The old cliche, it takes money to make money, but this is an investment that would actually pay itself, I can see forward in a short period of time, and keep on paying for itself. From what I read on there and what we've talked about, I think it'd be great. I think it's something we do need here. I think it's something we need to lock into while it's here and start utilizing its purpose and its grants and funds that we're going to need here shortly.
Everybody okay with it? Their site, it's kind of odd. It is www.nlc.org rather than gov. So, very good. We'll join. I'll send all the packets of information to you all relative to it.
Okay. And if that's all on that particular topic, I had a couple of board appointments that are coming up. I wanted to share those with you guys. One of the recommended appointees is actually in attendance tonight, Mr. Peterman. He's Ward 2 spot is opened up, and Ward 3 is up for renewal. As you know, Matt Wiggins served on the Charter Commission and has been an absolutely wonderful addition to the planning and zoning. So I asked him if he'd be willing to serve again, and he absolutely was. So. Anyway, so those are those, and study them. If you have any issues or questions later on, give me a shout. And anyway, we're kind of at the end of our formal agenda for this evening. Is there anything under other that anybody would like to bring up at this time? If not, I'd entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we go into executive session to discuss litigation and personnel matters in accord with RSMO 610.021, subsections 1 and 3.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to move into executive session. Could I please